Welcome to OnlyFins Q&A Live, a question and answer show exclusive to OnlyFins and Miami Dolphins Discord server. Now here's your host, Alf.
And we're on, and this is OnlyFins Q&A Live, the only show that if you want to participate in live, you want to ask questions live, you want to watch it being produced live, which is a different experience than what you get when you listen to it on the feed. When you listen to it on the feed, it's very manicured. All the ads are in. The music is in. Here, you're going to hear me, say things like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then silence. So it's a different experience. If you want to do that, you got to go and become a member of our Discord. And to do that, you got to go to discord.gg/OnlyFins. And you become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. Another reminder, this is the last week of this promo code for ThompsonCigar.com. Use the promo code 3YARDS20. That's the number 3, YARDS20, and you get 20% off your order of over $75 or more. They've been with us since preseason, so we thank them, and we expect them to be back for next season. But I guess they're taking a break right after the draft, kind of like what we do. We have a special guest today, Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. How are you, Kyle?
I'm good, and I like that you get the just pure visceral content experience here in the OnlyFins stage, which you said that it's not all dressed up. This is what creating content is actually like as a content creator.
Yeah. How much fun is this week, or is it a destination? Like I talked to some coaches, and coaches say you really gotta avoid thinking of winning as a destination, because once you don't really get there ever. So is this week you having fun with it, or does it feel like a destination? Like you're ready for it to be over with?
I revel in this week the most, especially in years when, like this year, I am like full court press in the process, doing all the grades for myself, doing all the player evaluations, because I'm done. Like I put together my national big board. I put together my Dolphin specific big board. I stacked them. I released them on Monday. And now it's kind of time for me, for the first time all cycle, I kind of just get to sit back and be like, oh, what's everybody else talking about? Oh, what's so-and-so think of this? Oh, for me, it was so wave over wave of, okay, I got to 250. I got to get to 300 players. Oh, I got 300. Let me check all the consensus rankings to make sure I get another 20 guys, and I'm as comprehensive as I possibly can be. So I know not everybody's draft process experience is like that, but that's how I work my way through it.
Have you ever been to a draft live in the press room?
I have not, and really the only reason that is because since 2017, I have always been doing live shows in some capacity, whether it was with my former company, NDT Scouting, that I founded when I got into the industry in 2013, or then it was with the Draft Network for a while, and then the past couple years it's been with Locked On. So I have always kind of been in front of a computer or in front of a camera when we were doing live shows. And it's on the list one of these years when it's going to line up, because I would like to experience it in that capacity. Have you?
Yeah. Technically, I've been to 2, but it's the same city, and I didn't get to go the first time because of COVID. So I was going to be there in Las Vegas when they would have drafted Tua Tagovailoa number 5 and so on and so forth. Austin Jackson, and then later Noah Igbenogany.
Who?
But
never heard of that last one. Who's that?
The Commanders have heard of him. Playoff football has heard of him. It's odd that he's played in more playoff games than the Dolphins have in the last 5 years.
Won a playoff game.
Yeah, he has. But yeah, then I went and I went to the very uneventful draft. But you can't blame me, okay? I put in for the credentials months in advance. I had no idea they were going to trade every single pick they owned. So I went to the Channing Tindall draft in Las Vegas with Chris Kaufman, and we were there to cover essentially no picks for 2 rounds. Okay? And we were sitting around day 3. It's a different experience. Seeing how the sausage is made, it's completely different than what you see on TV. What you see on TV is a very finely manicured and produced product. When you're there live, you tend to see how guys can be really good insiders. It's not a let's just say that they don't have the greatest contacts, although they do. Let's put our cards on the table. These guys have very, very good contacts around the league and with agents, but they get a lot of information first because we were there and we had the AJ Brown trade 30 minutes before it actually happened. And we were specifically told by NFL media, you can't report it or we throw you out of here. Because they had to share it with their partners, ESPN and NFL Network, right?
Right.
And you do know the picks. You know how, there was people that would go on Twitter and dazzle you with knowing the picks, a minute, 2 minutes in advance. Well, that's because they tell us the picks 5 minutes before they get announced on stage. Okay? So it's a completely different experience. I will say this. It's a great experience as far as content because you do get one-on-ones with players. Everybody who's in the green room, you do get one-on-ones. Like I got 15 minutes with Sauce Gardner. Asked him a bunch of questions. He badmouthed Tyreek Hill to me, which was kind of cool. It didn't go as viral as I expected it to, but it was okay. But it was a lot of fun, and and I very famously, the best thing I got out of that draft weekend was being in the green room with the players right next to the stage, and then leaving the draft on night one, walking through the lobby, which is just basically a stone's throw away from where the green room is, and witnessing that there was 40 to 50 prostitutes there waiting for all the players.
Oh, lovely. That's what we were just saying about the recording in the 3 yards per carry stage, right? That's visceral content. It's not all dressed up for final product. That's real content there.
No, it is not. All right, some off the wall questions, and then we're gonna get to your questions, members of OnlyFins. All right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Your favorite day 3 running back that Mike McDaniel will absolutely take in this draft?
Oh, Jayon Blue from Texas, right? Guy can fly like the wind. Guy's got some receiving profile, creates some separation when he's working down the field. It's just the ball security thing with him is really scary. But the rest of the traits, if he was a little bit better in ball security, I'd look at another 4-3 guy that's another track meet weapon. And obviously coming from Texas, there's a ton of parallels with that Texas offense to what Miami's doing at the NFL level. So I just see a lot of 1-for-1 reps and the speed and receiving game profile. For sure, I would be willing to bet. Actually, here's a fun nugget for you. With the conversions that I did from the grades I did for all 32 teams with the 33rd team and converting those into Dolphins-specific grade, no player's grade went up more when grading explicitly for the Dolphins scheme out of the 320 players that I did than Jayon Blue.
Your thoughts on Nate Carter?
On who?
Nate Carter of Michigan State?
Not one of the 320 I did.
Okay.
So I'm going to come up empty-handed on that one for you.
All right. Georgia Bulldog guards. Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild. Who do you like? Would you take one of those two? Maybe even both. Your thoughts on those two guys?
I'm a big fan of both of those guys for what they are. Fairchild, I think, is a little bit less dynamic of an athlete than what Ratledge is, but he's got like a wrestling background in high school, and that always sets off all kinds of tinglies and warm and fuzzies for offensive line coaches everywhere when a guy knows how to use his hands and leverage, and I think you see that in Fairchild's game. I think he's a little bit rougher around the edges in pass protection than with what Ratledge is, or Fairchild, I should say, is a little rough around the edges than what Ratledge is. I think predictively, Fairchild might be an early day 3 guy, so pick at 116 could be a candidate there if he's there. I don't know that Tate's going to make it to your pick at 98, so you might have to do some shuffling around the board, but I'm a big fan of both of those guys at certain values and would love to add either one.
Most likely offensive lineman to be taken at 13 for the Dolphins.
I would say Kelvin Banks, but I don't know. There's this big push right now that Kelvin Banks might not make it to 13. So he's another one of these guys who's getting the the draft week surge and how much of it is real, how much of it is not. If he's there, there's a ton of smoke. I think that sets off some alarm bells, and there's a tackle element there to his game that would fit a little bit more with kind of the archetype that they've drafted when they have gone offensive lineman early. So I think that's a good name to invoke. Realistically, I don't think Will Campbell gets outside the top 5. I don't think Armand Membu gets outside the top 10. So it's either Banks or whoever is that next name down for you, whether it's Gray Zabel or Josh Connerly or Donovan Jackson or whoever else. But I'd say Banks if he makes it.
All right, 2 more questions. And this one is the last offensive line question. Jackson Slater, where do you have him as far as your evaluation, and what about his fit for a Miami Dolphin?
Yeah, I think he's a good fit for Miami. He's kind of got some of that Mason McCormick vibe to his game from last year's draft class as a smaller school guy. Projected early day 3 is kind of where I have him. So either of those 4th round picks, I could get why that would be your selection. Maybe you want to get greedy and maybe he makes it to you at 150. But that's the big mystery for me is kind of the value proposition for offensive line. And if you go defensive tackle and corner and go very defense heavy early, those are some of the names that I think you're going to have to put on your radar and put a gold star next to on day 3, because I think you do need the volume of extra assets there. So I think Jackson's a really good option. He's got some good power and gap scheme resume, but he's a good enough athlete to work the zone stuff and develop. But you take that and then you add on the level of competition leap, and it's just, I wouldn't want that to be their only solution at that spot.
All right. Most likely offensive player to be taken in day 1 or 2 that is not an offensive lineman for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, for the Dolphins? I want to say a tight end, just because Jonnu Smith's in a contract year and they didn't really give a whole lot of guaranteed money to Pharaoh Brown. I think he only got $20,000 guaranteed on that contract. So
a used car.
That seems, that's a great way to put it. And you're not afraid if it turns into a lemon because you're not on the hook for a lot. I think I'll go tight end based off the economics of the position, and also because I don't think Tyreek Hill is a particularly tradable asset right now, which means he's probably going to be here, which would diminish the value in drafting another wide receiver.
All right. We're going to go to break now. But before we do, let me tell you about Underdog. Do you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get into the game? Well, let's go with Underdog. There's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. The game is in your hands. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, i.e. points for basketball, strikeouts for baseball, etc. Points for hockey. There's a hockey game tonight. Pretty big one. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all baseball picks, or hockey, or basketball, or mix and match across all the sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 just with your hoops knowledge. Download the Underdog app today and sign up now using the promo code 3YARDS. That's a promo code 3YARDS, the number 3 yards, to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code 3YARDS. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon your first deposit. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE NY or text HOPE NY to 467-369. And now for the rest of our sponsors. Are you a South Florida property owner with an insurance claim? Are you dealing with water, mold, or fire damage to your home or business? Are you having trouble locating a 5-star rated general contractor that is fully licensed, certified, and insured? If the answer is yes, then Water Cleanup of Florida is here for you 24 hours a day. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, Jorge, and their team is prepared to handle any size property damage disaster. When an unexpected damage occurs to your home or business, you need specialized, fast, and reliable services. Water Cleanup of Florida understands the impact and stress an unexpected disaster may cause. Their objective is to make the cleanup and insurance claim process painless and hassle-free. Water Cleanup of Florida is also a licensed general contractor, so they provide the A to Z service, one-stop shopping that busy homeowners and business owners require. Water Cleanup of Florida is now an authorized dealer of Eurocraft cabinets, so premier kitchen, bath, and laundry cabinetry, countertops, and other accessories are available for your viewing at their showroom in Boca Raton. Or, do you prefer to shop from your home or office? Then Water Cleanup will send you one of our design specialists to you with samples and products that fit your style and budget. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell phone if you have any questions at 954-579-0356. That's 954-579-0356. Or visit their website at wcufl.com. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And please check out their more than 80 5-star reviews on Google and Facebook. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts. And we're back. All right. We promised this. We're going to get to your questions in the chat, and I will fire. Look, you just put them in the chat, and I will try to get to as many as we can. We have a kind of a time constraint here because Discord only allows 25 minutes of video. So we're going to try to run through these. First question. Are there any players you're afraid the Dolphins might draft? The past couple of drafts, it seems like there have been those players we were afraid they would target.
I have two in particular. One is Quinn Ewers, who they've shown some interest in at quarterback. He's not for me.
No.
And then Dion Walker from Kentucky, the supersized defensive tackle that everybody loved because he told PFF he was going to run a 4.6 ahead of the 2024 season and he had 7 sacks that were fool's gold and not translatable reps at all, and everybody got all excited about that. And then the PR machine came out and hit and said, "Oh, he played this year with a broken back." Okay, well now he's 6'7", 360 with a broken back. Like what do we like here? So that's one I just don't see it at all. And with the need that they have, I would be terrified if they perceive that to be a potential actual legit solution.
All right. What do you think Miami could get for trade with the Broncos to number 20 as they look to jump the Colts for the tight end, namely probably Tyler Warren?
If they came up, that on the trade value chart is a difference of about 300 points, depending on which trade value chart that you use. I like to use the old school Jimmy Johnson board. Which would that point differential is equal to about the 60th pick in the draft. So Denver has pick 51. So maybe you send 13 and a 4 or a 5, and maybe you could get back 20 and 51. I like that option. I don't love that option because I'd like more picks if I'm being greedy instead of having to send 2 to get 2. But I'm certainly not going to be upset at the prospect of putting another pick in that sweet spot of this draft in the late 40s and early 50s.
All right, a question from me in case they don't ask it. Most likely Jaylen Ramsey destination, Eagles, Cowboys, or Rams, or the field?
It seems like Howie Roseman always gets on these things when they happen. So, and I know they did a bunch of offloading. Sounds like they're interested in continuing to offload some additional assets, and I think if Miami's going to move him this weekend, they're probably going to have to pay some more of that salary down. And that's, unless they just take 2026 draft capital, which I would hate as well. But you got to do what you got to do. And if he doesn't want to be here, then he shouldn't be here, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll go Philly, because I think they could be in a position to take on kind of the fresh contract without any of the guarantees aside of what he's owed this year.
All right. If 13 isn't a cornerback and a run happens before 48, eliminating value at the spot where you want to see a double dip at cornerback from 98 and beyond to increase the likelihood of a meaningful rookie contributor.
It depends on who's out there. If you told me they could get Noel Williams from Cal, I think that could be a viable option for you. I think if you look at Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech, I could get excited about that as an early day 3 option. If you told me they get Corey Black from Oklahoma State, dude played a bunch of press man, high stress on island coverage and ran 4.35 at the Big 12 Pro Day. So I think there's some options, but I think your most attractive options if you get to that juncture is probably to look for a third safety that can kind of play in the nickel and has some man-to-man ability, and there should be a few that are there. And if you get a player like that, maybe you can kind of fall into being a little bit more de facto big nickel and have the safety be the nickel player. And then it's Cater Kohu and whatever you get, whether it's a veteran free agent signing, which I would have to imagine they'd bring somebody in, and we're not just going to put our eggs in Cam Smith or Artie Burns or Storm Duck or whatever that looks like.
Is there value in a trade that sees us exiting the first round? Say, for example, and he gives an example of a trade in, look, if you're exiting the first round, you're selling pick 13, you should get a haul. Is there value in doing something like that?
I think there is through the lens of the long-term scope, and I know that's something a lot of fans have kind of had a hard time compartmentalizing, right? Is there's this perceived pressure to win in the here and now. There's perceived hot seats that exist. I don't think they're operating that way, though. They certainly have not given the impression from afar that they're emptying the chamber and foregoing future years to succumb to that pressure. So, yeah, I really think when you look back at where this build kind of got off the rails, it was, well, you got stripped of one of the 3, and then you traded for Tyreek Hill, and then you traded for Bradley Chubb all in a rapid succession, and you lost all this early draft capital and emptied the well and got away from you. And I think if you could get the kind of haul that warrants moving out, it's probably multiple, or it's probably a 1 next year and a number of day 2 picks this year. And if you can get something like that, depending on what the board looks like at 13, like I'd give it some serious consideration, because I think you can still get if you trade into the early 30s, I think you still have a chance to get a really good player, and then you're potentially doubling your swings of the bat on day 2, plus getting an extra 1.
All right, next question. Yesterday you broke the news, meaning myself, and we actually did on the pod. Broke the news that the Eagles are open to trading Dallas Goedert and Devonta Smith, or either or. On the pod, Simon said he knows McDaniel loves his tight ends. It was also reported yesterday that George Kittle and the 49ers are far apart on the new contract. Those are all those shiny objects, Kyle, that fans love. Could this be an option for the Dolphins during this draft?
Man, I hope not. And it has nothing to do with George Kittle and Dallas Goedert and I guess Devonta Smith's probably a little different, but that feels like big time overkill for your resources, given that I don't think you're going to be able to cash out on Tyreek Hill. So I think the big focus, the big point of emphasis has been resetting some of their financial books and kind of gearing up for the next upswing of a life cycle to try to build around the talent that you have. And a lot of that has to do with not adding second and third contracts for aging players that are, in the case of Goedert and the case of George Kittle, we're talking pushing 30, right? So it just kind of flies in the face of everything that they've done with what they've tried to achieve. So if you want to trade for a player, can you find a player that's on a rookie contract that maybe had a scheme change or a coaching staff change, that they're not a great fit anymore, ideally has more than just 1 year left of player control, so that you're not trading for a player that's going to leave. Although if you don't intend on bringing that player back and they think they can hit for you, there have been teams in the past that have done that to try to game the compensatory pick formula. And I know everybody cringes about that because it's what blew up in their face last year with not getting a better backup quarterback. But I think there's a lot of inputs that go into who are veteran players that make sense to target. For me personally, like, I'm not interested in bringing anybody in that's going to be $15, $20, $25 million a season as somebody externally from elsewhere, because you want to bring in all the cost-controlled talent, and doing so is going to cost you. Bringing those other players in is going to cost you a lot of your assets that would be cost-controlled talent.
All right, draft rumors abound. Which one are you hearing the most, and that sounds more likely? I'll give one for myself. I think that New Orleans and Shadur Sanders is probably a marriage that's probably going to happen on draft day. So that's mine. So if you
You
could
think
bet,
that happens?
yeah,
You
I
think
think
that happens at 9?
yeah, I think that happens at 9. I think if I can't get a line on it, but if you could put Shadur Sanders at 9 to the Saints, I think that's where he goes.
I might go against you on that one.
So Mikael Williams to the Saints?
So here's a set of dots that I have connected, and a lot of people have started to connect with, and it's with San Francisco with Mikael Williams. I'm glad you mentioned him. I think that is a spot for them. I think that's a big pairing. There's been a ton of smoke. Kelvin Banks and Mikael Williams are going to go earlier than you think. Mikael Williams is going to go earlier than you think. San Francisco, with the needs that they have, they lost corner, so they've been mocked corners. They don't know offensive line help. They've been mocked offensive line help. Some people now think that you're going to get Membu, Campbell, and Banks all in the top 10. And if that happens, then San Francisco, I think Mikael Williams is kind of my leader in the clubhouse to get mocked there. I think New Orleans takes a quarterback potentially at 40. I think they'd like to try to. Mickey Loomis has always subscribed to the idea of go get your guys. And if they feel they can get up from 40 into the 20s and maybe go get a Jackson Dart, they would do that. And then I'm kind of inclined to think that if they don't do that, or if they can't achieve that, they'd stick and potentially pick Tyler Shuck at 40.
All right. Next question. You think Barron makes it to the Fins? Travis doesn't think so. I assume he means Travis Wingfield and not Travis Hunter or Travis Kelce.
I think the biggest threats for Jahdae Barron are the Raiders, the Jets, and the Saints. I think the Raiders, it sounds like they've been teasing the Genty interest, but it sounds like they may end up going offensive tackle, perhaps. I think Membu at right tackle there makes a lot of sense. The Jets at 7 are a wild card. If Jacksonville ends up going offense and Mason Graham's available, would the Jets go Mason Graham or would they go Jahdae Barron? I think that's a really interesting one. I don't have a great deal of confidence in either way. And then for me, New Orleans at 9, they've spent like the last 7 first-round picks that they've had on either offensive or defensive linemen. And Ramczyk just retired, and that wasn't a surprise, and that wasn't in the cards for them. But Trevor Penning's on an expiring contract. They have Talise Fuaga at left tackle, who played right tackle at Oregon State that they kicked over, and I thought, that's kind of weird. So do they have a left tackle that they like to potentially kick him back over? They have just been a very persistent drafting trend team that has me thinking trenches for New Orleans, but obviously they've lost a starting corner in free agency, so they have the vacancy. I think if he gets past the Raiders, the Jets, and the Saints, he will make it to the Dolphins.
All right. Next question. What pick will you spark a cigar for?
How about trade down and still get Jahdae Barron? I think that's Barron's very high up on my list for my personal preference because of the coverage versatility, the alignment versatility, the matchup versatility. They did a bunch of that with Cater last year. And I know there's size concerns at corner, and I get it, but the ambiguity that you can present with players like that can be very confusing and force a lot of post-snap processing. So he's super high football character guy from everything that I've heard. I know he's an older player, so that's a concern for some fans, but he plays the run, he tackles, he's got ball production this year. He can play some man, he can play some zone, he can play inside, outside. He just does a lot, checks a lot of boxes. If you could get him, and if you can weaponize kind of the stigma around if you perceive or if people perceive he's only an inside guy, which I don't believe with, and slide down the board a little bit and still land him, I think that would be a dream come true type scenario for Miami.
All right, 2 more questions. This one I'm going to massage it a little bit. People write these paragraphs as questions. So, all right, let's say that they pull off their daily double of their cornerback and their defensive tackle with pick 13, pick 48, or vice versa.
Yep.
Would you consider that third pick on day 2 to be a luxury pick, and would you use it on somebody like Travion Henderson or Elek Ayamanor, somebody like that?
I think what I've made peace with is there's going to be a spot on the roster when and you're going to say, ooh. Like, there's too many boxes to check and not enough picks. So just draft good players. And if that means that you are fluid with the pick at 13, like if the corners are gone, don't just pick a defensive tackle to pick a defensive tackle. Like, pick somebody that's going to take a lot of snaps and improve your roster and get better. I do have a bit of a hard time with the idea of a skill player in the top 100 unless you add more picks. But I would never say never. Like, if you got to 98 and you had Kyle Williams from Washington State was there, or if you had Elek Ayamanor who was there, or if Jack Betch from TCU somehow fell to you, and this like these guys are dogs that like to block and can play physical, but they can catch the football and have some size to them. I'm not going to bat an eye, and I'm going to say, okay, the vision is clear here. It's a good player. It's a good fit. And I will never get mad about good players and good fits if I perceive them to be that. And if I don't perceive it to be that, then I hope that I'm wrong because I want every player that they pick to end up being a good one.
All right, last question. Who's a second or third round player that come fall, everyone will be asking how they weren't a first rounder?
Oh, that's a good question.
Has to be a running back, right? That fires off, 400 yards in the first month of the season. So I'm going to give you mine, Travion Henderson.
I think there's a non-zero chance he goes in the first round, Alf.
Wow.
It depends if Denver can't get up from 20 and Genty goes either 5 or 6 or 10 to Chicago and Denver's stuck there picking and the wide receiver run happens in the teens with Dallas and Atlanta and potentially Seattle or Tampa Bay. If those names run, I really feel like Denver's entire objective is to improve the skill group. And I feel pretty confident in saying Travion Henderson's their running back too. So if it's not Genty because he goes and the wide receivers run, they just signed Evan Ingram, and I know it's a 1-year deal, so that might be a deterrent from, and it might not be a deterrent, but Henderson I think has a pretty decent chance to go just based on some of the other dynamics in this draft class.
All right.
I could see Elijah Arroyo hitting big.
Okay.
And obviously there's the knee stuff there for him in the past, the medicals. That's a bit of a flag, but I see some of the player that people thought the Falcons were getting with Kyle Pitts. You see some of that in his game, and I think he's probably a little bit more fluid than Kyle. But obviously the stigma around that kind of player is a flex tight end that's a power tight end in the slot. Kind of the stereotype of being able to play with your hand in the dirt. I could see in the right situation Arroyo really booming and people being like, hey, this guy should have gone a lot earlier.
All right. Tell the people what you got going the rest of this week.
Yeah, we got a little bit of everything. So over on Touchdown Miami on Substack, we put out our 320-player horizontal draft board, which is supposed to emulate what the draft room looks like for NFL teams. I've had a chance to see a couple of them, especially down at the Senior Bowl with Jim Nagy, where he would set up their boards and we go down and talk to them before the Senior Bowl, and just in awe of what that looked like and really tried to emulate that with the content that I do there. Thing I like about that is I put 40 Dolphins players on the board as well through the same grading scale, so you can kind of see who are prospects that are upgrades or downgrades from talent the Dolphins currently have under contract. We have a live stream on Thursday night over on YouTube with Locked On NFL Scouting. Friday is going to be very Dolphins-centric, 33rd team. I'm putting out my final mock draft on Wednesday night, putting out a day 2 mock draft on Friday, putting out a 2026 mock draft on Sunday. So we're going to be a little mock crazy down the stretch here, but if you like written, you like audio, you like video, a little something for everything somewhere on the interwebs.
All right, one last thing, because I haven't heard you answer this. It's pick 13. Shadur Sanders is on the board. What are you doing?
Seeing if anybody wants to trade up.
And the answer is no.
I I have Shadur Sanders as the top-rated quarterback for the offense that Miami currently runs. I don't have him highly enough graded, and I know there's long-term concern and durability questions with Tua Tagovailoa. I don't have Shadur rated highly enough to warrant and justify picking the quarterback just as a quote-unquote get-out-of-jail-free card with the quarterback durability situation that you have yourself signed up in. So I would press the phones hard to see if anybody panics, and if they don't, then I would probably still end up taking my best available player elsewhere.
All right. Thank you for joining me, Kyle.
Alf, it's good catching up with you, man.
Thanks for listening to OnlyFins Q&A Live.